Hello and welcome to the Mental Wellness Ministry podcast brought to you by Adam Road Presbyterian Church. This is a podcast that helps you safeguard your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. My name is Joanne, and today we are diving into the mosh pit of interpersonal conflicts in the context of COVID-19. This is a time when much has been revealed to us. What was strong or weak before, during peacetime, is now being magnified in our own lives, in our families, and in our society. As conflicts arise, how do we cope? And also, how do we respond wisely as Christians? This is what one of our listeners has echoed in her question to us. She says, recognizing that broken relationships and hurtful people can be a source of anxiety, is there a valid space for keeping a distance from people with negative energy so that one's mental health can improve? How can this approach of keeping a distance, even with family members, possibly be a good testimony to believers? To tackle these questions, we have invited Ms. Penny Quek, counselor at The Haven, and Pastor Kenneth Goh to share their thoughts with us. Hi, Penny and Pastor Kenneth. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi,
Joanne.
Glad to be here.
Well, there is plenty to unpack here, so we will approach it in parts. Penny, perhaps you could start us off with the first part of our listener's question on keeping a distance from people to safeguard our mental health.
Hi, sure. Okay, firstly, I just wanted to say that it is great that this person asking the question is very much aware that the broken relationships in the family and hurtful people in her midst are the sources of her anxiety. This awareness is important because then you know exactly what it is that you're dealing with. There are two parts of this question. The first part is really asking if it is justifiable to keep a distance from a toxic person or the environment. Then I've broken up the second part to say, to ask, how can keeping a distance from toxic people or environment be a good testimony, whether to believers, unbelievers, or others? So let me address the first question. Well, in short, my answer is this. It is justifiable to maintain a distance in order to protect yourself and to save that relationship. It is really valid because of two reasons. The first reason being, it's for your own protection. If you don't do something to protect yourself by maintaining a distance, the anxiety may result in many other mental health issues. Anxiety could very well degenerate into depression. Anxiety could make you become suicidal. It would, might even result in low self-esteem, high sense of insecurity, and could even make you cause you to become dysfunctional and eventually lose your job. So this is the reason why I say it is valid justification, because ultimately you really want to work on the relationship between you and this person. So don't get me wrong by thinking that it's justifiable, you maintain your distance and then you stay that way, because there is a second part to that answer, which is really you want to save and work on that relationship. So let me give you an example. I have a friend who has a very toxic relationship with her father, actually. When she meets with him, he would literally suck the life out of her. She used to tell me he would exasperate her with all his extreme demands, and then when she came home, she realized that she has massive headaches and even gastric problems half the time. So after she came to realize that he is toxic, she began to realize that she needs to keep some distance from him. This is what we term setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is about setting guidelines, rules, or limits for yourself as well as for others, so that there is no infringement of undesirable behavior towards you or others. In her own words to me, she said that to me one time, if she hadn't kept distance, actually by now, she would most likely have gone crazy. So anyway, I'm again using her as an example. I'll tell you what setting boundaries looks like. So she limits the number of times she meets with him in a week and the length of time she spends with him each time. This is valid justification for her own protection and her own mental health. So in short, this is the first part of my answer. It is justifiable indeed. Now I come to the second part about saving the relationship. What do I mean by that? Well, she's not abandoning her father. She could very well do that, right? They are both independent adults. And there's, of course, then her mother who is very able to take care of her father. She's prepared to save that relationship with the father. when she is well and strong enough to confront him about his misgivings, his, perhaps unreasonable ways of handling both his daughter and his wife. She wants to work at the relationship, but in order to do that, in order to be able to do that, she needs to keep her distance now to enable her to be healed. So I come back to what I said, the second part of the first question. It is justified to keep your distance because ultimately it is about healing a broken relationship.
Thank you, Penny, for giving us that great perspective on keeping a distance so that we can ultimately heal a broken relationship. Well, I guess setting boundaries is great, and helping to put some physical distance between both parties is good. But because we're in this unique time of COVID-19, can you tell us more about what setting boundaries might look like in confined spaces? Because many of us still have to work from home, so we don't have that luxury of setting time limits where we are face to face with a person, and many times we have to be in the same spaces with them every day. So could you give us some alternatives to physical distancing as part of setting boundaries?
Sure, Joanne. So, firstly, setting boundaries doesn't always involve keeping a physical distance, perhaps even mental distance, if you understand what I'm saying. One way we can set this kind of boundary would be for you, for example, to focus on yourself. For example, do some breathing or mindfulness exercise to take your focus off the issue that is bothering you all the time. Now, this will probably work in a short-term period. Another way would be to minimize interaction time with this person that you're trying to keep a distance from. Say, you might want to wake up earlier than him and spend the time by yourself, or sleeping later, or something like that. I give you an example of myself. For example, this is real. I like to cook. So when I'm cooking, I usually use this time to be in my own space. It's a time to relax and process out of my thoughts, even the frustrating ones that I get from the day. So another way is also perhaps to divide your confined space. This is again, of course, it's physical distancing, but to divide that confined space. For example, if you have to work from home, then perhaps you can designate a certain area in the house, okay, to be your workspace. Now, for example, you say, okay, from say 9 to 11 a.m., I need that space to be my work area. So we have to kind of like everybody has to, if you want to use the word pretend, that that's where I need to be working and I can't be disturbed, right? So then, but at the same time, you have to negotiate with the family members for that privacy, during that particular time. But of course, we also have to, remember that we want to render the same treatment to the other members of the family. Now, also just to clarify, we do need to communicate to others about the boundaries we have set. No point setting a boundary within your own mind, but no one knows about it. Boundaries must be communicated. Does that answer your question, Joanne?
Yes, thank you. And I hope that it's helpful to our listeners who are tuning in as well. So thank you for giving us that perspective. The Mental Wellness Ministry podcast is now streaming on all your favorite platforms. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook. Tune in the way you like it for your Soundbites for Sound Minds today. If you have a question for us, please email mental.wellness@arpc.sg or send a direct message to @soundmind.sg on Facebook or Instagram. The Mental Wellness Ministry podcast is brought to you by Adam Road Presbyterian Church. God bless you and keep you.